Shefty tweeting this: since word surfaced that Tom is expected to land in Tampa, an unexpected high number of players have reached out to the Buccaneers to let them know they want to join the former Patriots quarterback there, per league sources. So we've obviously lauded the weapons that Tom Brady already has, Max, and now he could be getting more. Will Brady be in the MVP conversation this upcoming season?
No, he won't. And I never thought Brady was bad at this point. I thought he was a middle-of-the-pack kind of quarterback. You can even say upper middle, because who do you really want in a big situation among the middle-of-the-pack guys? That's fine. That's a far ways off from where he was a couple of years ago. But he's still a solid NFL starting caliber quarterback, as you can see at least. So why can't he win MVP with all those weapons around him, right? He doesn't have a tight end. He doesn't have an outside threat. And now he has Godwin and Evans and Howard and Brate. And they're talking about maybe Antonio Brown at some point. And where's Todd Gurley going to play? And all these things. But that's the point. I saw a projection for Tom Brady that said I think it was 27 touchdowns against 10 interceptions, 4,000-something yards, 4,500 yards, something like that. With all of those weapons, it's an acknowledgement. When people say, well, Brady needs more around him now, it's an acknowledgement of the slippage. And in the event that Brady puts up good, solid numbers, or even better than that, given the weapons on his team, he's going to have to win an awfully lot in Tampa Bay to be ahead of guys like Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, who will once again set the world on fire. Someone like Patrick Mahomes also has weapons, but look at the numbers he puts up when he does. Brady, if he puts up big numbers, people will point to the amount of help he needed. And in addition to that, I don't think he's capable of putting up those kind of monster MVP numbers, even with this group of guys. Of course, at a certain point, if you also add AB and you also add someone else later, he can put up maybe, Pro Bowl caliber numbers, I would say, this year.
Well, my response to all of that, Max, would be first things first. I mean, listen, we understand, that you repeatedly remind us that you never said Brady was bad. I mean, you say it so often over the last few days. Do you want people to forget how much you brought up the cliff? I mean, my goodness, own it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we know he's not bad. We know that he's good. Now, to get to Tom Brady, in terms of the ability to be an MVP candidate, I'd say yes. Because here's the thing. Folks have been talking about how because he has arrived in Tampa Bay, that they expect and anticipate that Tom Brady will be in the playoffs. Well, guess what? With this offense, with a Mike Evans, with a Godwin, with an O.J. Howard, with a Brady and these boys, okay? What if this dude ends up actually winning the NFC South over Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints? I think automatically you'll look at people talking about Tom Brady in an elevated fashion in regards to potential league MVP consideration and things of that nature. I'm looking at a defense that was ranked 29th, Louis Riddick, 29th in points forfeited, but only 15th in terms of yards allowed. What does that tell you? That brings the 30 interceptions that Jameis Winston accumulated into consideration. The bad field position, the kind of compromising position he put them in because they constantly had to come back on the field because of his damn interceptions, even though he did throw for 5,100 yards and 33 touchdowns. The reality is that Tom Brady hasn't thrown more than 14 interceptions in a season, I think, in his career, at least in the last decade. And so when you look at it from that perspective, his ability to protect the football and to give the defense rest, defense is going to be better. Offense is expected to be a juggernaut. If they can win the NFC South, I think Tom Brady is going to warrant consideration for league MVP honors.
Yeah, when I first saw this question, I was starting to think about this. Well, I mean, there's so many unknowns, right? I mean, how could we even go this far ahead, jump this far ahead to even have a discussion about whether or not he could be in the MVP? But for the sake of discussion, okay, think about, this is all going to come down to relationships again. It always does. It always does. His relationship with Bruce Arians, his relationship with Byron Leftwich, his relationship with Tom Moore, his relationship with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. And I think, okay, has Bruce Arians ever been in a similar situation where he has taken a veteran quarterback who many people thought had maybe hit the wall, was maybe done, his best days were behind him, and had he ever helped elevate an older quarterback's play to the point where all of a sudden he was in the MVP conversation? Yeah, he has. He did it for Carson Palmer when they were in Arizona. And I remember bringing that up when Carson Palmer was having that year before he got hurt when the Arizona Cardinals went to the playoffs and lost to the Carolina Panthers, and people going, he can't be in the MVP conversation. He's not that good. I'm like, look at his stats. Yes, actually they are. Well, if you think now about Tom Brady, and let's just project, let's just assume that there's not much drop-off this year as far as ball speed, arm strength, his willingness to stand in the pocket, take hits. Let's just say there's not much drop-off. Let's assume that. Go back to week 2 last year in New England when they were playing the Miami Dolphins, when Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon were playing, and Julian Edelman, and all these guys were healthy. And think about that game, and think about how he diced them up. I know it was the Miami Dolphins week 2, and we can't really, extrapolate too much from that and project it forward. But just think about how he threw the football in that game and how sharp he looked and how on point he looked. Now think about him with the weapons that he has down there, and let's assume that him, Tom Moore, Bruce Arians, and Byron Leftwich get on the same page. And you're right, Stephen A. Let's assume that the defense continues to improve under Ty Bowles, Kevin Ross, Nick Rapone, all the people on the defensive side of the ball. And let's just assume this. Let's just assume Tom is happy. Let's assume Tom is in a good place, that he is having fun, as Steve Young talked about, that it isn't the grind anymore that it can be in New England under Bill's tutelage. And that's not to knock Bill, but that's just the way it is. Let's just assume Tom is going to play carefree. And then also let's assume that everyone else in the media is going to be rooting for Tom, and everything he does, they're going to absolutely just magnify times 10 because he's Tom Brady, and maybe he deserves it at this point in his career. There's no question he could be in the MVP conversation.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.